Hi, my name is John Perry. I'm a history teacher here at Wellington High School. I'm also the advisor to our Civil War History Club. And what you're seeing today is our annual Military History Fair, which we use as a fundraiser for our biannual trip to Gettysburg, our field study. We've been doing this now for about 22 years, and what we do is we have the students set up with boards like a science fair to they choose a topic, a military history topic. It doesn't have to be the Civil War. It doesn't have to be American military history. We give them some leeway for that. And they choose their interest, and they develop a project board like you would see at a science fair. And we display those boards, and sometimes they will apply artifacts to those boards. It might be some computer technology, some video technology. And then we also call in and ask some friends, veteran reenactors, veterans, military memorabilia collectors. They come in and set up and help us out with this fair to just kind of have a chance to display and show off their collections while they help us raise these funds. And it's our goal to educate the public, give the students a chance to demonstrate their knowledge, exercise their interest in various areas of military history, and give the public a chance to be educated by that. We've had very successful years. We've had very successful fairs for raising our funds, but also to educate the public, as I say, and it's been very enjoyable for our students.
Hello, my name is Ernest Schuley. I'm a sergeant in field artillery during the Civil War. 3 stripes is red stripes is artillery. If you had 3 gold stripes, that would be cavalry, and the 3 blue stripes, that's infantry. Now the reason the Civil War soldier wears his pistol like this, backwards, reversed like a cowboy, is because of the sword. If you had a sword on this side, your strong arm is your right hand. You pull the sword out with your strong hand, your right hand, and your left hand is your weak hand. You throw the pistol out with the left hand. So strong hand, sword hand, left hand is your pistol. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't take it out this way if somebody wasn't close, but the sword was the authority of the officer, and they carried swords probably into the Spanish-American War and probably the First World War. They started getting away from it when you had machine guns, so they weren't using the sword. So they reversed the holster back the opposite way with the Colt 45 automatic. They went back to the old way, the cowboy way. But they always had flaps on it to keep the dirt out. These are artillery pieces. This is a 6-pound smoothbore bronze cannon from the Civil War. It was a 6-pounder, would shoot a 6-pound round ball like this. The 12-pounder, this is a 6 and this is a 12. They used the 6-pounders early in the Civil War, 1861 and 62. And then they liked the bigger one. They liked the 12-pounder. So any of these smaller ones that were around, they started melting them down and making into the Napoleon 12-pounders because they liked the Napoleon, because these were a little bit light for the Civil War. This unit would have been pulled by 6 horses. The cannon and the limber, the artillery box here with the ammunition in it, would weigh about 3,300 pounds, about a little over a ton and a half. And it carried, each box carried 50 rounds. 50 rounds with this one in. If this one, with the bigger one, same box, bigger cannonballs, but it only hold 35 cannons. So for standardization, they kept all the ammunition boxes the same. Pulled by 6 horses. The left 3 horses are ridden up by saddle. They had no reins on them and no brakes, and not like a stagecoach where they have reins. So the left 3 horses would be ridden by somebody with saddles on them, and when he went into battle, there'd be 6 horses back here, They would get down off the horses, lay down on the ground, hold the horses' reins, and the horses would have to stand there. And anybody shooting at this cannon, the poor beasts, the poor horses over there, they would get shot. They would be taking most of the fire, because if any of the projectiles or something would hit this box, I would just explode this thing, probably kill everybody in this area. So the horses were driven this way, and you had 5 or 6 guys working the gun, 2 back here. If they, whatever kind of shot they wanted to use, they would call back, they would take it out of the box, give it to somebody, and he would carry it up to the front and put it in. Well, the way they did that, everything in this box had the ball, and it had what they call a fixed charge. That's 1.25 pounds of black powder there. It's sand in there now. But it was put in, you rammed it in, the guy would push it all the way to the back of this cannon back here. Then he would take a pick, push it down through the hole, make a hole in the bag so there's black powder sticking out. And this little piece here is called a friction primer. It's a piece of brass tube with a wire running through it, and it's got gunpowder in there. And they would take a lanyard, stick this thing in. Now, this is sticking inside there with a hole in the bag. They would put this down inside there, and when everybody would clear out around the gun, and they would yank that, when he said fire, they would yank that rope with the hook on it, and it would pull this piece of wire out, and the wire will make like a match. It makes a spark, and the spark comes out and it blows down through here and hits this bag that's been cut in the bottom of this, and that's what makes the cannonball makes the cannonball come out. If you had a different kind of charge, this is called this is a bursting charge with little iron balls in there. It has a Borman fuse in it. Now, this one here would have to be caught on fire. The powder bag's back here. And when the cannon fires, the fire comes around the front of the ball, and it catches the fuse on the front on fire. Now, this could be set from 1/4 to 5 1/4 seconds. If they wanted to set the fuse for 3 seconds, he'd yell back. The sergeant would yell back, cut fuses for 3 seconds. These 2 guys back there would take a tool out and cut that at the 3-second mark. So there'd be a little hole there cut into tin, and there'd be leaking black powder out there. So next time when it was pushed in there, the fire would have come around the ball and hit that spot that's been cut at 3 seconds. And if you look at it real close, you can see the gunpowder still in there. That fuse would just go around and burn right through the middle like that, and then hit this gunpowder and explode that whole thing. So that could be set to go out anywhere from, you wouldn't want it to go out at just 1/4 second, but be fired over the top of the soldiers, over their heads, and so it would rain down on them. And this is canister. This is what when they got real close and they were shooting the artillerymen with rifles, this is in the range of 300 yards. This is all filled with iron balls, and they fired this into the ground in front of advancing soldiers. So you could see this stuff hit the ground in big clouds of dust, and the round balls would hit the ground and then ricochet back up and hit you just about midway up. This one has about, I think, 72 or 75 round balls in it. This is one is a 6-pound, this is a 12-pound. Now this is actually a smaller bore, a 3-inch bore, but it's an 8-inch shell, because this was for rifling. Those are for smooth bore, like a pipe. And this one is made for rifling. It has a twist in it all the way down the barrel, and when this spins out, it turns like that. The more spin it has, the more accuracy it has down range. But this was interesting because it actually had a paper mache top over the top of it, just like this, paper mache right in here. And the powder bag was put in separately. It wasn't attached like these are. Powder bag was pushed into the cannon, then this with paper mache would be pushed in right behind it, and when the explosion happens, it pushes the paper mache up against this ridge, which smashes that up and builds a lip on it, and that picks up the that picks up the rifling, because the expansion of the paper mache, and that picked up the rifling and made the rifle. The only bad thing is if the paper mache got wet, they'd have trouble, if it swelled up in any way, it would have trouble getting it back down the barrel. So sometimes if the paper mache got too wet, it would swell, and then they would have it they wouldn't be able to push it down the barrel. That was the bad thing.
Hi, I'm Tom Pennington. I'm doing a Civil War presentation of a Confederate soldier today, or your typical soldier. Some of the things on the table here is what he would carry or have with him in camp. Some of the things that you see in front of me here, this would be an artillery sword, 1831. They would carry that, and behind the gun, they'd have it on their side on a belt. This is a D-handle knife, and this would be an infantry knife. They didn't carry these long because they were so cumbersome to carry with them on the march, and they actually disregarded them after a short time. What you'll see here, this is called a housewife. It is a sewing kit, and they call it the call it the housewife because they would keep their thread, buttons, and so forth inside of it. And they would carry that in a knapsack or in a haversack such as this is here. And I would also put my cup on that and carry it with me on the march. One of the unique things that you'll see here is a canteen like this is called a smooth side. If it's sort of leaking on the seams, they would take that and throw it in a fire, and they would melt the seam on it, and when it get two halves, they'd make a frying pan out of it. And they would take this, make a stick, and they had a handle for their frying pan, and it's real light to carry. Some of the other canteens is a wooden canteen. They would make that out of cherry wood, and just like a wooden boat, it swelled and kept the water inside. It would seal it. But they would make this out of cherry wood because they thought that would make the water taste a little sweeter. Some of the other things we have here is the utensils. The utensils aren't very much different than today. They have wooden handles, and the tines on a fork is a little bit different. And this is almost like a butter knife, and each guy would have a spoon as well. And they would carry it in something of a small sack like this. We'd call this a ditty bag. If you would look right here, you'll see that is the original Doug utensils, and that was dug from Fredericksburg, Virginia, a few years ago. If you would look right here, that is an artillery shell. That is a James shell, and this is a reproduction, of course, but that would be a typical shell that the Confederates would shoot in their cannons. There are various other ways of making a pan. That's one of a long handle that would go into fire, wouldn't burn yourself. This here is called a bullseye canteen, and that canteen with the bullseye on it, with the markings corrugated, they thought it would make it stronger so that it wouldn't crush if you laid on it. This is a typical Confederate style of canteen. It doesn't hold as much water, but they would have various straps of leather, and they would have straps of material such as this and this one.
Hi, my name is Keith Kaufman, and I'm a Civil War reenactor for the representing the common soldier from the North. And what you see here today is a display of implements and equipment that the common soldier would carry with him during the Civil War. Most of what you'll see here is a display of equipment that is pared down for a soldier that would be on campaign or during the active season where the soldiers would be fighting. So it was necessary to keep weight to a minimum. all things considered, the equipment here probably total weight would be in about 40 pounds. You'll notice the uniforms both north and south are typically of a wool construction, so therefore you'll find that it was necessary for the soldiers to try and keep the weight that they carried along with them to a minimum. We'll start off. This is a common rifle that the Northern soldiers would carry. It's a 58 caliber Springfield rifle. It's a contract gun that the government provided, and most common rifle used by the Northern soldiers during the war. It was a muzzle loader. Weighs approximately 11 pounds. Being a muzzle loader, it was loaded through the muzzle end of the gun with loading a cartridge, loading a bullet through the barrel. It would have been necessary for the soldier to tear off the tail of a cartridge, pour the powder down the barrel, seat the lead ball in the end of the barrel, and then remove the ramrod and ram that cartridge all the way down in and seat it in the base of the gun. Return the rammer, then prime with a cap, and then would be able to fire the rifle. Common soldiers were capable of firing 3 accurate shots per minute. Soldiers also carried a bayonet that was attached and fixed to the end of the rifle. It's not sharpened. It was more of a design for probably a scare tactic than anything else. Very, very few wounds during the war were attributed to being stabbed with the bayonet. It probably served a better purpose stuck in the ground with a candle in it for the soldiers, or better yet, used to cook over an open fire with. Some of the other things that you'll see here, again, that soldiers carried, Northern soldiers carried a lot of a black tarred bag that was called a haversack that would have carried most of all these other small items that you see here: tin plate, fork, knife, and spoon, their food. If they carried and maintained a diary or wrote letters, this would be something that they would have also carried in there. So you can imagine all this conglomeration of cooked food and these implements all get jumbled together inside this bag, and it becomes a fairly messy conglomeration of things. You also note that soldiers would shave, and a straight razor and soap and a mirror, toothbrush, towel, and that would they would also carry then a blanket, and perhaps in this instance a gum blanket or rubberized canvas as a poncho or ground cloth to protect them from the elements when they were camping out for the evening. Here you have a frying pan, what commonly was known as a creeper. During the Civil War, the soldiers typically one or two soldiers in a mess might carry one of these for the purposes of cooking their food. Also have Northern soldiers carried a canteen for their water, and this particular one has a wool cloth outer covering on it and a cork stopper in it. Cartridge box where the soldiers carried the ammunition for their rifle was slung over a shoulder. Internally, it carried 40 rounds of ammunition. Again, they are these paper cartridges with black powder in the upper portion of it and a lead mini ball in the lower portion of it. And last but not least, during the winter months, soldiers had what they called a greatcoat. And this was a coat that was provided to them by the government. It has some unique features to it for the time period. You'll note that it has cuff sleeves on it. Well, they didn't issue gloves to soldiers back at that time period, so soldiers would roll down over the lengths of the sleeves and use those as a means of protecting their hands during the winter months. It also had a cape on it that buttoned up, that could be buttoned and thrown over the head, sort of as a hood, in order to also protect them. Rather stylish. Again, a leather, or rather a wool overcoat. And again, this is all practical equipment, things that the soldier would have carried, things such as the coat and other items that were used during the winter months would have then put into storage when they became the active campaign season. To understand that during that time period of the Civil War, they didn't fight all year round. Typically, when the weather got too rainy, muddy, or snowy, they went into winter quarters, stayed there until the weather changed in the spring to start the active campaign season to fight again. And these items, such as the overcoat and some of the other items, would be put into storage for them until they returned in the fall.
Hello, my name is Craig Sartorius. I'm a retired social studies teacher from Amherst, Ohio. Put in about 34 years teaching. Spent 2 years in the United States Army back in 1970 to 1972. And we're here at the Wellington Historical Military History Fair. And on either side of me here, you can see some copies of American flags. This one here, you can only see a portion of it. I've got the bottom of it pinned up. It's 2 feet longer. And what this is a 1/5 scale copy of the Star-Spangled Banner, the flag that was at Fort McHenry, the national anthem. When you go to a baseball game, this is what you sing to. And it's on display in Washington, D.C. And right here, I don't know if you can focus on any of these. Right here, you can see the original. Here's a man standing in front of the original flag, right here. It's hanging outside a building. This flag originally was 30 feet wide and 43 feet long. And it was the inspiration for the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. And it's on display today in Washington, D.C. The American Civil War was the last war that flags were actually carried into battle. And when you carried a flag into battle, you were risking your life, because the other side, when they would ask their officers, where should we shoot? They said, aim for the flags. So whoever was carrying the flag was the target. And your side would rally on the flag. When the flags went forward, you went forward. When the flags came back, you went back. Over the course of the Civil War, most units had usually 2 or 3 sets of flags. They came in pairs, and they would get shot to pieces. Sometimes they were so ripped up there was almost nothing left of them. They might only be this wide, and all of this would be completely destroyed. The War Department authorized all units up until 1898, the Spanish-American War, to inscribe on the stripes the names of battles that these units did admirably in. The name was on the center stripe. This is the 8th Regiment OVUSA, Ohio Volunteers United States Army. And 2 companies from the 8th Ohio came from Lorain County, Company H and Company I. Some of the veterans are buried here in Lorain County. Now, these are the names of all the battles that the 8th Ohio participated in. This 34-star flag, I believe that's 34. I haven't counted them in a while. And these are copied from the flags that are down in Columbus. Like right here, Fredericksburg. Here, Gettysburg. And both these words are spelled wrong on the original flags. The man that made them, they gave him the wrong spelling. So when I made these copies, we painted these stripes, the names on, painted them on there exactly the way they spelled them. But these are all the battles. Some of these you may have heard of. Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Cold Harbor. It's a bloody war for these people. Okay, here we are with some more of the battle flags. These were copied from flags down in Columbus, Ohio at the State Historical Society. This is a regimental flag, and the Ohio flags were very distinct. Many of the Ohio regimental flags had these large embroidered eagles. This thing is actually embroidered. And then the ribbon on the bottom and the clouds, the sunburst, and the stars at the top were all painted. Now, since these things were painted, when you looked at the underside, everything came out backwards. So if you're on the back side, everything is backwards. 110th Regiment, Ohio Volunteer Infantry, United States Army. And then your clouds with the 13 stars, 13 little arrowheads. I'm not sure how many leaves. I think there's 13 stripes here. But anyhow, each regiment would have one of these, and then this flag over here. At the time of the Civil War, the star patterns were not standardized. There were all kinds of patterns. You're used to seeing them in stripes, as we saw over there. This was the most common pattern for a flag, a Union or Northern flag during the Civil War. There are 34 stars here in this double ellipse, I believe it's called. 34 stars, and these are painted gold. Originally, people talked about having white stars, and when the war started, they said it's quicker to paint them, but white paint just didn't look good. They tried silver paint, and that would oxidize and turn black. So they settled on gold. So these are actually painted on here. This particular flag has no designation anywhere on it. This is what was called the Philadelphia Depot pattern. This particular flag was the most common one the Union had. So anyhow, in the Civil War, being a color bearer, these are called colors, these are the two flags a unit would use, was the most dangerous job, as I'd mentioned earlier, because as you're advancing, the other side was firing at the flags. Some of you maybe remember as a child playing that game, Capture the Flag. And basically that was what was going on in the Civil War. It was a major, major accomplishment to capture the enemy's flag. It was a major embarrassment to lose your flag, or as they called it, your colors. So the fighting around the flags was unbelievable. Some of the battles, they would have, the entire colored guard would be shot down. The Union, the North, the color guard usually was 8 men, a sergeant to carry the United States flag, a corporal to carry the blue state or regimental flag, and then 7 other corporals with rifles, and their only duty was to guard the colors. And the fighting was horrific around them. If you go to downtown Cleveland, right on the square, right outside of the Terminal Tower near the stadium, there's a huge monument. It's a Civil War monument, and there's statues all the way around it. On the front, facing towards the lake, is a statue of the color guard of the 103rd Ohio, primarily from, part of it from Sheffield, Ohio, part of it from Medina County, and I can't remember where else. And at the Battle of Resaca, Georgia, in May 14th, I believe, of 1864, the entire color guard was shot down. A portion of them killed, the rest of them badly wounded. So it was a great honor, believe it or not, to carry the flag, but it was also the deadliest job.
Okay, I'm Gil Sano. I'm a retired junior high history teacher from Elyria, and I collect U.S. Army uniforms. What I have here in this display are, to the right, the dress uniforms of General Charles Justin Bailey, who was a World War I division commander. The reason I put together the display, as you see, General Bailey was responsible for Army soldiers wearing shoulder sleeve insignia, like you see here. He's the one who came up with the idea for the 81st Division, and it spread all through the Army, or American Expeditionary Force, in France. And he's the guy who was behind it.
Hello, I'm Brittany Maurer, and we're at the Military History Fair, and we're here asking Mitchell Farr about his project. So what's your project about, Mitch?
This is my project, Armor. I did on the history of the armor-piercing weapons. Now, some of the more modern armor-piercing weapons were first introduced during the Civil War, when the introduction of the ironclad warship came in with the Monitor and the Merrimack. But for an overall historic view, armor-piercing weapons have been around since medieval times. You know, you got your suit of armor. You gotta have some way to get through that to get to the other guy. A normal shell for armor piercing is consisted of 4 main parts. The first is a lightweight ballistic shell, which will impact the armor, say of a tank. It will hit it and it will soften up the armor, so that way the second layer, which is a steel alloy shell, penetrates through that armor, going through it and getting inside the armor. Then, once it's inside the armor, a bursting charge is set off, exploding, basically having to destroy the innards of, say, the tank. Which in an overall view, it punches through, going through the armor and exploding, causing much damage. Below here, we have a Russian Mosin-Nagant rifle outfitted with a bayonet here. Now, the bayonet here, this was designed to pierce heavy wool trench coats, because during World War I, they had a real hard time shooting down soldiers in trenches when they were wearing these coats, because it was made of heavy wool material and which deflected the bullets. Now, what they came up to deal with this was the trench knife, which is a multi-sided knife, and that basically opened up holes in the wool, allowing it to pierce through. Same thing with this bayonet. Now, today, if you had a knife with more than 4 sides, that would be highly illegal, and you would probably go to jail. Another good example of armor-piercing weapons is the anti-tank rifle. Now, those were introduced in the 1980s, not as weapons of war, but big game hunting weapons. Now, but when World War I came around, and when they introduced the tank, they had to have some way to fend off these tanks without another tank present. So they invented a rifle with a very heavy bullet, so it penetrates. Now, in today's anti-tank rifles are now more known as material rifles, because they can shoot down basically anything, and they mainly use them for long-distance sniper missions. Like one of the longest sniper kills in history was actually last year. It was a distance of 3,079 yards, and it was in the current Afghanistan conflict.
Okay, hi, I'm Brittany and I'm here with Ed Fuquay.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about his project. So what was your project for today?
My project is about MK Ultra. MK Ultra was a series of tests back in the Cold War that both we and the Russians worked on to unlock the secrets of mind control.
Mind control, you say?
Yes, mind control.
Would you like to elaborate more on how they did that?
Sure. After the Second World War, we and the Russians got involved in the Cold War, arms race. We wanted to get ahead of the Russians. We looked at paranormal ways of warfare. And after World War II, we initiated something called Operation Paperclip. It was looking for ways to recruit. It was a covert operation to recruit secret Nazi scientists. Head Nazi scientists. I'm sorry. Someone like Werner von Braun and Albert Einstein. However, some were charged with war crimes because of working on mind control and gas warfare and interrogation and whatnot. So that's how we got involved with it. And then the Korean War came along. The Chinese did capture several American soldiers, and allegedly they had committed something called Hisei Now. And the Hisei Now is Chinese for mind washing, basically brainwashing. So in response to that, we made MK Ultra. MK Ultra was to we used it against American citizens and soldiers and Canadian citizens as well. So we would use front organizations such as prisons, hospitals, universities to lure in people to drug them with LSD and other psychotropic drugs and see the results. And this all led to a whole different bunch of other operations like Project Artichoke, MK Ultra, MK Delta, MK Naomi, Project Bluebird, and Project Span. Project Span was a project to weaponize LSD into a gas form to use against enemy positions. And that was worked on by a guy named Frank Olson. Frank Olson was a U.S. government's doctor working on MK Ultra, working on gas warfare, working on stuff like that. And he also worked on something. He also was involved in something called the Ponta Set Aspirats mass poisoning. This happened back in 1951, allegedly. What happened was, in the small town of the Ponta Set Aspirat, a mass psychotic outbreak happened. Several people were killed, many people went insane, and this all happened in one night. This was originally led to a bread fungus, but recent articles point that it could have been a massive MK Ultra experiment carried out by the CIA because it was during the era of Project Span and MK Ultra. And Frank Olson was allegedly in the city days before the outbreak. Okay, so after that, 2 years later, in 1953, Frank Olson leaves his job due to moral concerns. A week later, he's found dead. He fell from a 13th floor window. Originally ruled as a suicide. It was later confirmed in 1994 in an autopsy that he was knocked out, drugged, and then thrown out of a 13th-story window. So we don't know if the CIA killed him or the Russians killed him, but it was indeed confirmed he was murdered, not suicide. It was a suicide. And after that, a guy named Ewan Cameron came along. He worked in the same stuff Olson did, but he worked more with civilians instead of like soldiers and abroad. Cameron, he would take patients with mild depression and anxiety, drug them, put them in drug-induced comas, and then, subject them to pre-recorded messages and orders. One patient in Kentucky, under Dr. Ewan Cameron's project, took a daily dose of LSD every day for half a year. This guy ends up dying, but he was still under Ewan Cameron. Now, real-life documents were actually leaked during the Watergate scandal. The CIA wanted to burn all these documents because the media was concentrated on Nixon. So they attempted to burn these documents. However, a misfiling led to the misfiling led to several 20,000 documents being leaked to public sources. Now, this is kind of sketchy because how would the CIA let the misfiling happen? Well, some say the CIA let it happen. That it wasn't just an accident; it actually happened. A guy by the name of Victor Marchetti, a 14-year CIA veteran. He basically wrote a book said CIA and the Cult of Intelligence. This book was the first book in U.S. history to be that the United States government went to court to censor. This book listed out the CIA, what it did, its projects, and what it does. In his book, he says the CIA, can lie to you about what they have done, what they are doing, and you would never know. The reason why he doesn't believe the misfiling, is because the CIA could quite possibly still be doing their projects. We just wouldn't know because they lied. They could have possibly lied to us, saying that we just misfiled, we just lost a couple files, and then give that to the public, and they might believe it, and many did believe it. Now this next few, that's basically what MK Ultra is. Yeah, let's give it.
Okay. So that's a pretty controversial topic. So what are your actual personal opinions on it?
Well, there's a whole another problem with my slideshow. I'm not going to go through it, but basically a video game called Polybius was released in 1981 after MK Ultra was allegedly stopped in 1977. It was released. It was apparently linked to MK Ultra because it didn't induce LSD-like symptoms, and apparently men in black suits would go in where the arcade was in Portland, Oregon, in 1981, collect data and leave, from the game arcades, and people would suffer from LSD symptoms. And that was after the cutoff date for MK Ultra. So personally, I believe that the U.S. government did get involved in MK Ultra, and I also do believe that the Russians and the Chinese were involved as well. And I do also believe it's still going on today because of all this disinformation campaign.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now we're here with Brittany asking her about her project. So Brittany, what exactly did you do?
Well, for my project, I kind of have a mixture of things going on. I mostly did women in the World Wars, but I also have some artifacts from both of the World Wars and also Vietnam.
Okay, why don't we start with your board? What's on your board?
Okay, so on my board, I have different things that women could do during the World Wars. On the right-hand side, I have Nurse Corps and the WAC, which was the Women's Army Corps. Now, down here is also a picture of the WAC, which would have been women in professional dress.
All right, any other things that they could do?
Absolutely. Women could join the workforce, and in the workforce you could work on tanks, aircraft, anything that would associate with to help the war effort. And women could also be bilingual telephone operators, which were called Hello Girls.
Very aptly named. When they were working, did they work in factories, or was there other more domestic type jobs that they could acquire?
Well, there were both. Women could work in factories on ammunition and tanks, like I said, but they could also work domestically at their homes and plant Liberty Gardens, for example.
Well, what exactly is a Liberty Garden?
Well, a Liberty Garden is a garden that a woman would grow at home to help keep food for herself and not have to worry about the rations that were going on in America to help the soldiers overseas.
I see. So would you say that the amount of women working went up?
It absolutely did. During 1940 to 1945, there was a jump increase of 10% of working women, which went from 27% to 37%. And by 1945, 1 in every 4 American women that were married were working.
Wow. So how did the culture take to this? Because I know before it was supposed to be the man who would bring home the money, and the women were supposed to stay home and take care of the children. Was there a big culture leap?
Absolutely, there was. Originally, men had a hard time adapting to the new roles women were taking on, but as the war effort grew, they kind of realized that they needed the women in the work effort.
Awesome. So could you tell us what you have on the table, your artifacts and stuff?
Absolutely. So, like I said, I have a mixture of Vietnam, World Wars, that sort of thing. So from World War I, I have 2 German almanacs, which are from 1911.
Could you point that out?
Absolutely. So these are the 2 German almanacs.
Awesome. Where'd you get them?
Well, my dad actually acquired them from his father, and they were passed down from my father's father's father.
Lots of fathers. What other things do you have on the table?
Well, other things I have on the table would include my Vietnam artifacts, which include a shaving and gun cleaning kit. For some reason, they were put together during this time period to acquire less space in their bags.
Clean face, clean gun. What other things do you have? You have a bayonet, I see?
Yeah, I do have a bayonet. It's from the Spanish-American War. It's from the U.S., and it would have gone on a Krag gun.
Do you know what era it's from? What date it was made in?
Absolutely. Actually, on the actual weapon itself, it has the date, and it's from 1898.
Very nice. Do you have anything more recent, like World War, or older? Either would work.
Yeah, I do. From World War II, I have a spotting scope.
What exactly is a spotting scope?
A spotting scope was used to see enemies beyond lines.
It's kind of like binoculars?
Kinda.
What about this cool looking container over here?
Well, the container is actually the container for the spotting scope.
That makes sense. Could you tell us what time period the helmet is from?
The helmet is also from Vietnam, and so is the messenger bag. And that's pretty much all I have going on over here.
Now we're here with John Fuquay, which is Ed's twin brother. We're not interviewing the same person, just so you know. So John, what exactly is your presentation about?
My presentation is Saxon England, Saxon militiamen from the 6th century to the 10th century AD. Right after the fall of the Roman Empire, several dozen Germanic tribes came over to either by serving in the Roman army or just coming to raid the Romans, and started mixing with the native Britons, and then came the Saxons. And what I'm wearing right now is what a Saxon militiaman, or just a farmer that would pick up a spear and a shield, would wear. That they would wear something kind of like this. It's called gambeson. It's just a thick quilt. You usually wear chainmail over it if you're rich enough to get it. Someone would be rich enough to hold a huskarl, which is like a heavier infantryman, and by English law they had to have the best equipment, the best armor, best helmets, and best training. On this, I'm wearing a tunic, which is telling me where I'm from, what shire I'm from, what county I'm from, what town I'm from. Lastly, right behind me, is my bed. On my bed and my food. What they would do is it was just kind of what Civil War soldiers would do. They put on the ground, put all the food, their water skin would sometimes hang here. Anything like personal trinkets or frying pan or whatnot, wrap it all up. Well, not a frying pan so much, but every once in a while. Wrap it all up, fold it and put it on your back like that, or to your side. And then you carry that when you're on the march. You carry your spear and your shield. Your shield can go on your back, and you just carry your spear. And that's all I got.
I have a quick question. You said that your tunic colors would say where you're from. Yeah. So were they required to wear that, or is that just choice?
That was more so you can that was choice. Also, it's also helped your lord, your huskarl, to know what his troops were on the battlefield. The reason why so many people wore bright colors back then, even up to the Civil War, was because so their soldiers can see, so their commanders can see, okay, those are my soldiers, those are the enemy soldiers, basically. That's why they wore it.
I see. You also said that it would be regular people. Would regular people volunteer to go around carrying their weapons, or would they be issued something and be forced into war? What was happening there?
Usually you'd be actually kind of voluntold. Like, you could be given a shield and said, the king needs you for this season to that season. So here's just provide your own weapon, because you didn't give you one. So I don't think they give you a shield. So you can use a pitchfork, a sword, and hatchet, but usually everyone actually could know how to make their own spears, so that's what they usually do. Archery, bowmen, they would be either young boys who didn't know how to fight yet in close quarters, or slaves, because it was seen as dishonorable to kill someone from range.
So it wasn't a post of honor?
Being a militiaman, no. Being a huskarl, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Well, thank you for joining us today at our Military History Fair. The Military History Fair was actually put on by the Wellington High School Civil War Club. And the Civil War Club is a club that is dedicated to understanding history and understanding the sacrifices that people made in order to give us a free nation. We don't just necessarily focus on Civil War Club, well, at least at the fair we don't. We also focus on other wars. Brittany, what are some other things we focus on?
Well, during this time, we focused on not only the Civil War, but both of the World Wars, the Vietnam War. I know the Spanish-American War was included. There was all kinds of different things.
True. We also had some Cold War. Well, we have a year where we go to Gettysburg. We go to Gettysburg every other year, and that's our field study. Since we are the Civil War History Club, Gettysburg seems the most fit. And donations to the Civil War Club and to the Military History Fair and other fundraisers that we do go towards that, and other things we do, such as we help with Veterans Day at the school. We put that on. We take the veterans in, we talk to them, we get their bios and stuff. So I hope you enjoyed your peek into the Military History Fair. So bye.